person and you're listening to this, can't live your life in a comfort zone. Don't focus on all the reasons why you can't. Focus on all the reasons why you can. We need a better way to detect threats.
This is the worst. We have to fix this.
Pay attention. Classes in session. Welcome to the school of scam, where the truth is harder than a traffic jam. So you never fall victim to another fake man. They lurk in the shadows, they slide in your DMs, but not on our watch, cause we expose all of them. School of Scam.
Welcome to another episode. As you know, the name has changed now from Mr. Fingers to the School of Scam. And today we have none and only the special guest. He's a good friend of mine. He's a brother as well. Not only that, but he's also one of my mentors. We've had him for part 1. Now we're bringing you a new season, part 2, where we are bringing hits and glitz. This next person is phenomenal. As you know him, last time we had, and people been asking me, when are you bringing Nithen in? He's here, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO and founder of Snode, Nithen Naidoo. Nithen, my brother and my friend, how you been, brother?
Well, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's nice to see you. I'm back home in South Africa, which is always beautiful. And just great energy, man. Great energy.
Yeah, man. And I mean, you guys also been working on amazing and great projects as well. And all these amazing things that you guys have been doing. You guys have been winning awards left, right, center. You guys have just been doing a lot of things, man. You guys have been doing a lot of groundwork. I want to give you first a big shout out to you and your team. And because I feel like we also don't give a lot of people behind the scenes, a shout out. So I want to give them a big shout out as well, because they also been putting the groundwork, from the interns to the juniors to the seniors to the threat hunters to the detection engineers to the senior engineers to the PR to the every single person in your team. And I want to give them a big shout out, man. They've been doing a phenomenal job into always making sure that the vision stays true.
100%. It's a team effort here. I've got an amazing team behind me. And they all believe in the cause. And they've done a phenomenal job this year. So last year, I think the difference between the years before and last year we got to represent South Africa in a very big way. Yeah. And it's always an honor to represent your country. So we have won awards on a national scale, but last year we represented the nation. The G20 DR Summit was one of the places where we won the category for secure digital infrastructure, and we took silver overall. And GISEC, which is the third largest security conference in the world in Dubai, so GISEC Global, where we also took an award last year. And that was beautiful. But we weren't the only African teams to take awards. In the global cyber drill, there were 2 African countries that came out in the top 3 in the competition. A big shout out to them. Pretty good showing for Africa. So I was quite happy.
Yeah, man. And what actually motivates you and your team to be doing all this work? Because you guys are doing a lot of protecting, threat hunting, detecting, and also informing people from a dark web's perspective as well.
Look, we've got this mission statement called Defend the Future. And you can read the statement in many ways. So we do predictive and prescriptive analytics, hence Defend the Future makes sense. We work with a lot of futuristic technology, emerging things. We very, very into artificial intelligence and quantum and its impact globally and within the defense sector, within cybersecurity. So Defend the Future in terms of like this futuristic state, which is not even futuristic, to be honest, it's here. But the most important one is Defend the Future is create the foundation on which the next generation can achieve their dreams. So solving social evils that first may limit the potential of the next generation, and their ability to adopt digitally, to leverage digital technology to propel themselves into innovation, right? Protect their IP, protect their ideas, educate them, keep them away from harm. Like the digital landscape can be, it's a world of promise, but it's also a world of the Wild West when it comes to the threat landscape. Educating them, protecting them, detecting those threats, keeping people safe online and even in the real world, using a digital advantage that we have, that you have, that I have, and using our knowledge in some way that solves social evils that plague us here at home, but also plague the rest of our continent. Human trafficking, crime, those kinds of things, disease, that also solve problems around the world, right? Because crime's not limited to South Africa, nor is it limited or restricted to Africa. So, we can, people always say, think locally, solve it globally. That's kind of like the plan.
Yeah, and now, I'm very much interested in talking about threat landscape in terms of the threat landscape of that we currently are facing right now. But I want to know from you, what has surprised you most about how the threat landscape is evolving or has evolved in the past few years?
So the most recent development, of course, for me, which is surprising, is the power of artificial intelligence in terms of how quickly it's being weaponized. And what makes this such an interesting conversation is because there's multiple schools of thoughts, right? There's the people who say, look, its impact is being exaggerated. And then there's these groups of people who are saying, no, its impacts, we haven't even scratched the surface of the impact. And in truth, for me, I like to have an opinion if I have the data to support what I'm saying, which has led me on which has led us at Snode on this mission to start using models, training models, especially lightweight models and open source models. And we've been starting to use them for offensive security. We have models now in AI that's actually showing us the power, of the offensive capability of AI. And of course, there's platforms like Kai, which is Cybersecurity AI. That's a really good platform. And then I have a few friends who are working on other platforms, and there's commercial platforms like Expo. And then there's even lesser known platforms like 20, which is really geared towards defense, all leveraging AI in our sort of cyber offensive capacity. But I think the reason we build our own, of course, is these are not leveraging public models. It's private models. It's lightweight models, so it's portable. And really, it's not a project about commercialization, rather a project about understanding both the where the points of leverage are using artificial intelligence, but also what is the potential, like the actual potential of the artificial intelligence to find vulnerabilities in code, find vulnerabilities static analysis, find vulnerabilities using dynamic analysis, enumerating and testing different types of vulnerabilities on software. I don't know if you read the article about OpenSSL, vulnerabilities discovered using artificial intelligence. There's a lot of work being done, a lot of research being done in that space. The power of the platform is what has been most surprising for me. So I'm a big believer in that it would be powerful and that it is going to change the landscape a lot for us. I think I was surprised to find out how quickly it managed to achieve everything it's achieving. And I do know there's people out there who disagree with me, and I'm open to have that debate. My experiences, my learnings have come from my experiences firsthand, working with the AI, working with the models, and that's been the biggest surprise for me. Less so quantum. I understand, we spend a lot of time trying to understand the impact of quantum. It's going to be huge. Quantum readiness, I solidly believe in it. It's something that we all need to be doing, but I think there hasn't been any surprising developments within that space or anything that is unforeseen. Nothing unsurprising for me. Biggest surprising area is the practical, actionable use cases for artificial intelligence to accelerate what we do within the offensive and defensive landscape. That's been the biggest eye-opener.
Man, as you said, I think one of the things I like as well is that you as the CEO, people don't know this, you also love getting your hands dirty, and it's rare finding either a CEO or a CISO who knows and understands the technology or knows how things work from an attack surface and also from a defense perspective. People don't know your background. He actually comes from a offense background. So that's one of the cool things which I really appreciate about you, because even if somebody tries to talk to you in a technical manner. You know how to respond in a technical manner because you are a technical person who thinks technically as well. That's one of the things which I really appreciate about you, because you know how to conversate from a business way and also from a technical way, which means you can relate to your people from either the easiest way and the hard way as well. But I want to talk more about in terms of, you guys just did something really cool, and it's something which I read as well. The patent you recently, you recent US patent on the encryption traffic threat detection, which has attracted the industry attention. I want you to explain to us, right, in simple terms, what problems are you solving with that innovation and why?
So today, if you use deep packet inspection or signature-based detection, you look at the payload that traverses the wire and you look to match a signature of some form of known malware that you've identified. So one problem that maybe 10 years ago we argued is that malware would be developed at such a rapid pace that using signature-based detection wouldn't be the most efficient or effective way of threat detection. We needed to move to more machine learning, anomaly detection, statistical analysis, and potentially leveraging deep learning and those kinds of different types of capabilities. Another problem that is presented using this approach is when traffic is encrypted, you can't actually use the signature-based detection to do the pattern matching and reliably detect threats. And the current industry solution to that is to take the private keys and perform something we call SSL interception. So we break open the encryption so we can see the clear text. If it's a clear text protocol, if it's a binary protocol, see the binary. And so that we can do that matching. And then we re-establish the encryption and we send the data outbound. Lots of research being done in the space that's counterintuitive. Secure decryption is an oxymoron, right? Encryption is for security, decryption is leaving you in a more vulnerable state. So the fact that our security appliances, in order to do their jobs, have to decrypt your traffic means, number one is they become a source of vulnerability because they have your keys. And if you look at how the edge perimeter devices that perform this task, like your firewalls, your VPN concentrators, all of those kinds of devices that are performing the SSL interception, being targeted. Right? Every week there's a new 0-day for one of these appliances. Now the fact that all your encryption keys are there, it's an issue, it's a problem. The other thing is the amount of with the geopolitical state right now, it really raises the questions around, can I trust the appliances with these private keys? Especially if you're critical national infrastructure, or if you're national security, or financial intelligence, or state. These are all like targets of hybrid warfare, right? So when somebody attacks you, and of course I have no political, I'm not east or west or anything. I'm just simply here to talk about cyber. When people attack you, it's not uncommon for them to attack your digital landscape first, your power grids, critical national infrastructure, the ports. All of these become targets. And you've got to start wondering, well, what if my adversary is part of my supply chain that underpins and protects this landscape? I've just given them the keys to the kingdom. And it sounds far-fetched, but I think in our previous conversation, we also touched on it. It's happened before. For 40 years, we bought encryption appliances from a company called Crypto AG, which happened to turn out 40 years later to be a front for the BSA and the CIA. So this blind trust in the appliance to hold your encryption keys and hold your secrets, it's not only a suboptimal solution, a dangerous solution, it's also a suboptimal solution, because you don't hold all the encryption keys for all the encrypted traffic. You only hold the encryption keys for the encrypted traffic that you control. So there's the part you don't control. People don't tell you is like easily 80% of your network traffic. And that means there's no solution for that 80% in terms of detection. The other thing is when we start talking about critical national infrastructure, you start talking about OT, and OT has very bespoke protocols, etc. And trying to we call it protocol dissection, break open these protocols and analyze them for threats may not be the most efficient solution for the future, especially when there's only a handful of vendors in the past, like Siemens, Honeywell, General Electric. But now with industrial IoT, you've got hundreds, thousands of people. You've got this rapid adoption of encryption. There's these proprietary protocols all underpinning your national infrastructure. we need a better way to detect threats. You can't be breaking open your encryption. But in summary, you shouldn't have to give up your secrets in order to defend yourself.
But there's something which I'm very much interested in, because again, and which is we're going to touch on this other point, but this one is very important for me because it's also something which I've been getting and I've noticed as well, and for people also outside who are interested, obviously maybe in the future who want to join in Snode, or even your clients as well outside, and somebody's watching there as well. You guys innovate almost all your technologies that you guys are using inside in-house, right? If you don't mind me asking about those particular technologies, do you mind explaining what technology do you guys have? Because I know you've got Guardian, if I'm correct, right? What does Guardian do? You've got a threat hunting tool. What does it do? You've got a dark webbing tool. What does all these tools name? Because I'm also interested in hearing the names. I'm sure the names are scientific, knowing you with your aerospace love. Let's hear you out. Let me hear you out.
No, not always. Not always. The names aren't always like the two projects we have at the moment, which I'm busy doing. We train our own AI models for offensive security. We think it's important for us to understand that. That might never be a commercial product. So not everything is done for commerce, but the amount we learn through that research and the power of that capability gives us internally to Snode to try and understand how do we better defend against those kinds of threats is invaluable. That project, by the way, the name is Firestarter. They're not always taken from very specific things. Firestarter is taken from the song by Prodigy, Firestarter, right? Which brings me to the next one. The next one is also a super aggressive anomaly detection engine that you can apply to all forms of data. So you think about fraud analytics, you think about anomalies in biomedical data, in recruitment, in procurement, in HR data, in CRM data. We're actually running trials of the technology now as we speak. It's one of the reasons I'm also in South Africa. That one's called Heatseeker, right? The kind of idea is for companies that don't understand where they're bleeding money due to fraud, collusion, etc., you'd be able to essentially run Project Heatseeker on your various data sets, and it would detect the anomalies, and your team then could go and isolate these anomalies. And it doesn't matter what the format of the data is, it doesn't matter what the structure of the data is, you'd be able to detect the anomalies, and it would detect all anomalies indicative of some form of fraud or collusion or disgruntled behavior. Any behavior out of the norm, an outlier, what we would call an outlier, that's indicative of some form of negative risk. Okay. To answer the rest of the questions, Guardian, it's an AI-led SecOps platform. It's just there to help people highly automate their security operations from end to end. Panthera is an active defense system. It detects threats and automatically responds to them, shutting them down. It does what, and I don't like using the term, but I think in industry, we call it autonomous response. It's not autonomous, it's automated. And that's why I have an issue with the terminology. I think sometimes marketing takes poetic license, and it comes at the cost of the naming conventions that we use academically. And then, so its traditional name is active defense, but the marketing name is sort of like autonomous response, right? But in truth, autonomy is a far bigger concept than just automatically responding to a threat. The AI-led SecOps platform, that's where the digital twin sits inside. And the digital twin allows you to preempt certain conditions. And basically how it works is things are emerging on the threat landscape. And there's a threat actor that's targeting a particular type of technology. There's a threat actor that's found a 0-day. Eventually, there's a patch that is coming out on this side that can be, you could patch diff and could be target for an attack. There's these sort of internal sort of attack vectors that we're seeing in the physical environment, in that are geospecific or proximity attacks. Like, for example, traditional criminal syndicates working with your employees to perform certain fraud actions, etc. Take all that intelligence, take all your internal intelligence, your threats, your vulnerabilities, your assets. Do I run this particular technology? Am I in this particular geolocation where this syndicate is operating? Do the profiles of my employees map back to those? And simulate hundreds of these scenarios onto the digital twin and then highlight the ones that you are most vulnerable, which are most probable to occur, and then tell you the one thing you need to do in order to break the chain. And the reason we built that is customers like vulnerability scan and you get thousands and thousands of criticals. But prioritizing alerts, whether it's a firewall alert, whether it's a vulnerability scan data or whatever, and giving it business context, understanding the actual business impact requires a lot of context in terms of the asset it affects, the threats it's exposed to, etc., which is lacking today, right? So as a SecOps platform, Guardian has that context. And what we do is we use the AI to make the correlations and the classifications possible. We use the digital twin to simulate the entire kill chain. And then we help you identify which of those chains are highly probable. And then this is the problem number 1 you need to fix. This is problem number 2 you need to fix. This is problem number 3. So just actionable intelligence. So what? Now what? You got a buffer overflow? So what? Now what? What is the very next thing you need to do when you leave this machine? What is that action you need to take?
What is the worst infrastructure that you've seen in the company where you had to recover data and you were like, yo, this is the worst. We have to fix this.
So the World Economic Forum rates cyber in its top 10 risks. I think it's in the top 5. I'm not sure where it is this year. So it's hard for me to believe anyone running critical national infrastructure is of the opinion they don't need cyber defense, right? And I don't think that's, I think we're lucky. The kind of people who come to Snode, they recognize and they acknowledge that there's a problem. They may not have visibility over the problem, they may not know the scale, but they at least know that they need a solution. So I'm lucky in the sense that the people I work with every day, my clients, etc., there's a level of awareness in these institutions, and I don't really have to justify why we're there. I'm not saying that problem doesn't exist for some, but I think that's a large part of a market that may not be as aware. However, when you're dealing with critical national infrastructure, you're dealing with banks, you're dealing with, defense, you're dealing with hospitals, you're dealing with fintech companies, they're acutely aware of the risk. They don't understand, they don't have the visibility of are they exposed to that risk and how likely is it to occur? And sometimes they don't understand, for example, where their assets are, if they're protected, do they have the right level of controls? And what are the threats that may be actively trying to compromise those assets? And if that sounds like odd to you, just think about national infrastructure, power grid. Think of every substation. Think of every, the coal infrastructure, the offices, the payments. You're talking about a highly complex system with maybe many years of technical debt that has built up. Not through poor management, just simply as an industry, engineers built OT. They were under the impression that this would be logically segregated and isolated, never expected it to merge with the internet. Then you get this IT-OT convergence that happens. And that's largely driven by emerging technology and capabilities. So now your historian goes into the cloud. Your edge becomes smart. AI is driving decision-making that's being made on the floor. And if you're a mine and you're not doing this, you can't produce diamonds at the cost of that the competitor can, which means you can't go to the market at the price they can, which means you can't have the margins that they're getting, which means you die as a business. If you fail to digitally transform, that is the risk you run. So all of these companies have to now digitally transform. They see the need for it, and suddenly this engineering landscape that wasn't designed to be connected to the hypernet, right? Because it's internet, it's space infrastructure, it's all of this hyper connectivity, right? Is now being connected. The PLCs are turning into IoT sensors. So from managing maybe a handful of devices, I now have thousands, right? We work in the agri-tech sector with plantations in the Philippines. Every plant has an IoT sensor. It's the largest, for that particular fruit, it's the largest plantation in the world. It's so big they have their own port where ships come in to take the fruit. So you're talking about sensors, can you imagine doing a firmware update on those sensors. Do you know what I mean? So it's, the problem has just exploded, and that connectivity to the cloud, the IT OT convergence has opened. Now we have to deal with this technical debt of security within these environments, which are very sensitive, right, to change, and are also very business sensitive, right? Because if you stop the crusher, like in a diamond facility, the amount of money they lose is ludicrous. They lose money per minute, not per day, per minute, right? So these are like unique challenges, which like some would say that sounds horrible, but it's actually exciting because, that's, as human beings and as professionals, those are the challenges that excite us, and finding solutions for that is a massive opportunity. I think we live in a day and an age where the access to information is so free, and our ability to solve problems is becoming so powerful, right? We're talking about artificial intelligence. The CEO of NVIDIA said he's not telling his engineers to write more code, he's telling them to find more problems to solve. I completely get that point, because today I can tell these models, so we train a model in Snode, I can tell that model exactly what I want it to do, and what would take me normally a couple of hours to code now suddenly gets given to me in the model, by the model. So now the question is not about, how do I build it, or do I have the time to build? It's really about finding the problems that are the most important problems to solve, leveraging the technology to help me solve. If you had to ask me where we're possibly not getting it perfectly on point, so we're not leveraging the power of the technologies at our disposal to solve the legacy issues that have been created. That's really, it's nobody's fault. And also, what's the value of blaming people, even if there was somebody to blame? That's irrelevant, right? We got to focus on our future. How do we move forward and stop the blame game?
Yeah, that's actually very good. I want to understand from you, because everybody says we are the best cybersecurity company, come work for us, we are the best, we're good at protecting and stuff like that. But what do you think makes Snode different? Give me 3 things that you think makes Snode different from your perspective, right?
So the one thing that makes us different is our belief in innovation, our belief in what we as South African engineering or African engineers can achieve, and our ability to take that to the rest of the world. Right? And if that's something that resonates with you, that's enough of a difference to say, hey, listen, that's the place I want to go and work. I think the other fact is impact. So I know, we do some work, we do a lot of work, like, with law enforcement. We try and apply our skills in areas like we mentioned, fraud, corruption, but also crime, trafficking, disease. I think if the one thing is, a lot of people, when they think of cyber, they think of malware, they think of pen testing, they think of all of these things. But the application of that knowledge, it far exceeds the bounds of traditional security. And that's the thing that makes Snode different as well, is we want to play outside the box. So we take the same tech we develop for inside the box, which is normally our commercial offering, and we take it and we allow people to have access to it so that they can leverage cyber better, right? Law enforcement, governments, non-profits, those kinds of things. And I think if that's where your heart's at, and a lot of people in Snode, actually that is where their heart is at. If they're not excited by the technology, they feel purpose through the work they do and how it talks to some of these initiatives, then I think, okay, Snode's a good choice for you. And then I think the last thing is people can relate, right? I'm just an SA boy, grew up in Pretoria, same streets you did. We're not some big conglomerate that doesn't have like a face and a personality that you can relate to. I think one of the nice things about you is people, they can relate to you. You're not just a brand, not just a name. You're not just a logo. You're a person, but you're a person that comes from the same place they come from. For a lot of the kids, the younger kids, the interns, that matters. It matters to them that I listen to the same music they do. We go to the same places. We like the same things. We watch the same sports. And I think what makes that connection meaningful is a lot of them have aspirations of one day building their own companies. Come work at Snode. You're not coming here to be a follower. You're coming here to be a leader. Someone taught me, and I think back to my days with Charles, Rulof, Arun, and you know, all the sensible guys who taught me how to be the way I am, right? And the only thing they asked for in return was that I return the favor. One day, you know, I share knowledge and, you know, I uplift people around.
And just closing it off right now, if you had a magic phone right now to call your younger self who is 27 years old, what advice would you give to that 27-year-old you right now? That magic phone rings, boom, pick it up.
Be fearless. I think too often in life, whether you're young or old, we let fear dictate the decisions we make, and we let fear take the wheel and drive, right? And I challenge you, anybody watching this, ask yourself the question, you know, what am I scared to do? And go do that, right? Learn to be fearless. Bravery is not the absence of fear. Yeah. It's acting despite your fears, right? And fear is completely healthy. That's not what I'm saying. Don't misunderstand. I think what you need to do is you need to be realistic about your fears. You need to assess them. You need to be brave. You need to make decisions, and you need to take risk and move forward. You can't live your life in a comfort zone. If you're a young person and you're listening to this conversation, and I know this resonates with you because you've had to make those decisions, face your fears, you successfully done it, and here we are, right? Your channel, right? Think about what fear stops you from doing if you're listening to this, and recognize how much it influences your potential. Because I think we could all be so much more if we learn to manage our fears and be fearless. So, younger me, don't be so scared.
I love that, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you having you on the show. As you know, we could be having a chat until next year comes, but you know, everything has to come to an end. As you know, as the great quote goes, everything has to come to an end. But I want to leave people with this. I believe in 3 things, which is ABC, which is apply, believe, and claim. Apply your knowledge on things that you understand and know. Believe and only control what you can. What you cannot control, leave out of your circle. And claim what's yours. What's yours is waiting you. It's waiting for you on the other side of fear, as my good friend has said right there. Fear will paralyze you. But remember that fear will not kill you. Go after what you want with everything that you got, because you don't want to live with regret. That's one of the things which I picked up from our first podcast. You don't want to live your life with regret or die with regret. Until next time, my friends, appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.